Hey, there we go. All right. I wanted to come back today and talk a little bit about contrails this time, or as some people think of them, chemtrails. Let's see. I didn't really want to do a. I suppose I could create another scene, but I don't really want to right now. So let me just pull up something just for the sake of having something pulled up. Heavy contrails. We'll just use it as a background image. Oop. There we go. So contrails, man, oh man. I thought this the first time I heard chemtrails, I thought it was a friggin' joke. I honestly thought people were just messing with me or plain sarcastic. Um, I didn't think they were serious about believing that there was actually some kind of nefarious plan to, uh, you know, seed the air with chemicals that would make a population docile. That's what for anybody who doesn't know what the chemtrails um, conspiracy theory is. It's basically that the government wants to control the masses by dumping chemicals onto them, and the way that they're doing that is by having pilots fly over areas and disguise their chemicals as contrails. And I mean, you can see right here, conspiracy theory right here. Um, to, it's funny. It really is that to do it to the degree that people are and these conspiracies are suggesting would be insane. And now to top it all off, they've got this whole cloud seeding harp thing going on, where they believe that there's a secret plan to create clouds. So, like, what? I mean, you look down here at the bottom right, and you see all these things, all these heavily hit areas. People they act like anytime they see any of this, it must be a big conspiracy. It can't be that they live in a high traffic area for airline traffic. Like, I want to see if I can find this. Let's see. Air traffic patterns, United States. See if I can get a map of like what the average. Yeah, so you're looking at these, and you're just seeing that there's absolutely a crazy amount of air traffic in the United States. Um, every single one of these lines, like, it looks so thick that it looks almost colored in, but it's not colored in. It's just a line. And of course, the density, as it increases, gets brighter, turns red. Makes perfect sense, right? So, like, these people are like, oh, I live in the middle of nowhere. You think you live in the middle of nowhere, but you live in the middle of nowhere, maybe as far as like, standard vehicle traffic is concerned, but you're not in the middle of nowhere as far as air traffic might be concerned. And just because you don't necessarily hear or see the air traffic doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that maybe it's engines that are quieter, or the sonic imprint is the sound rather isn't reaching you where you're at. There could be a lot of reasons for that. A lot of them have to do with wind, various things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, to the people who think that chemtrails or contrails are all chemtrails, and that the government has this grand conspiracy. I was talking about this though with somebody one time, and I was trying to go over all the different things that would require to. I mean, you would literally have to have so many people involved in this conspiracy and agreeing to it. It would just be insane. I mean, you would have to have basically, but like at least a quarter of the airline pilots Airlines themselves would have to be involved. You wouldn't be able to have them coming out of a separate thing because then somebody would have to mechanically freaking flip a switch for that. So then you're assuming that it has to be mixed into the fuel mixtures, which would then have to be something that would survive or catalyze off of a jet fuel burn. And there's not many chemicals that are going to survive a burn of that kind of temperature. No, what contrails are is just when a jet burns fuel, it creates water vapor. Basically, the airs. It's not the fuel burning that necessarily makes the water vapor. What it is that the air up there has moisture in it, and it's so cold and dense that when it burns, the moisture in the air becomes vapor. It's vaporized, legitimately, 100%. That's what that is. Um, so when you get that water vapor coming back out of the backside of the jet as exhaust, just the leavings of it, you would have essentially droplets of moisture. That's what water vapor is, and it would look similar to steam, but it's so the density of the air and the cold up there instantly crystallize that, and it creates trails of basically really weightless ice crystals, essentially. Very, very fine. And those eventually melt, of course, again, and that's why you see vapor trails dissipate, is that as they are descending and melting over time, that they fade out. Oh man, it's just like it blows my mind that people don't get this. Some people will see more seasonal vapor trails because it gets colder and therefore lower flying airplanes are encountering that same temperature. So like normally if it's really hot in your area, like you're in Arizona or someplace like that, I just say Arizona because it's known for its heat. Death Valley area, you're somewhere like that, and a lot of the time, unless it's a higher altitude plane, the temperature of the air is not cold enough to necessarily create the vapor so much that you would notice it at that distance, at least. Not that there isn't any contrails, it's just that it's going to be less common, right? You need, the higher you go, the colder it gets, so therefore you need high altitude flights to be traveling through that area. Not every area has such high altitude flights, and especially not consistently. But as it gets colder, seasonally colder in areas, you don't have to go as high to generate contrails, which is why during certain times of the year, you're going to see more contrails. So people will go through like an entire summer and they're like, oh, things are great. I've only seen 5 contrails. And then of course the, fall comes in and it starts getting cold. Winter comes in, it's super cold. And of course there's contrails everywhere because the same traffic that they had all year long flying to the same altitude now is encountering much colder air, which of course is having the whole basic contrail process that existed all the other time, but just didn't encounter so much vapor to create and the air wasn't cold enough to create the ice crystals that create the contrails. So it's funny because like, oh my God, all of a sudden, there's all these contrails. I'm like, homie, this all existed before. It just wasn't cold enough for you to see it visually because it didn't turn into all these ice crystals before. So yeah, not like how would you get that many pilots? How would you get that many airlines? How would you get that many flight mechanics? All these people who have to pick up the fuel and dump the fuel and make the fuel. All of these people, you'd have to have so many people in on this process from so many different points. It would be so impossible to not only all these people are going, yes, my family, give us the contrail, make completely poison us, take away our free will, whatever the case may be in this conspiracy. How would you get that many people to be okay with it? All these politicians, all these higher ups in the military, all these scientists be like, yeah, okay, expose us. Obviously they would never do that. And then you get the people who are like, oh yeah, but you can get all those people to take they would take an antidote and they could give an antidote to their family. So now their families either A, knowing they're getting an antidote, or their families would be being drugged against their will, only to protect them, right? But like, where does that stop? Like, the amount of effort that goes into trying to make this theory real is insane. The only thing that the only real way to make people docile is to keep them stupid, and the way you do that is to aggrandize things like this. Honestly, to facilitate their understanding of things, or to make them feel like they're in on understanding things that other people don't understand. It makes it easy for them to believe that they're in on some secret privileged information, that they understand things that other people don't understand, and therefore they are the smart ones, and everybody else who thinks they're smart, they're all stupid. They wish they knew, but they're an elite who doesn't actually know anything. Like, it's really insane that we've got this, but this is not an unforeseen thing. This is not an uncommon thing. This is completely what you do with propaganda. Is you look for people who aren't let's say academically gifted or strong-willed, personality-wise, people who are easy to influence, and that can be intelligent people. Not saying that intelligent people can't be easily influenced, but there's different ways to go about it. For things like conspiracies like this, it's the intelligent people that would be the hardest to win over, just because they already know the basic scientific principles behind all this. This is stuff you actually should be learning in school. For anybody who hasn't learned this stuff in school, like your science class failed you. For people who did learn about contrails in school and didn't understand the science, and somehow have allowed themselves to actually buy into this conspiracy, holy shit, dudes. Like, it's nonsense. It's complete and utter nonsense. Contrails don't exist. There's no amount of chemicals you could just dump on people to make them docile that just wouldn't affect everybody and just be like massively. You would notice if people are suddenly super lethargic one day because they're getting doses of some kind of chemical that are just influencing their, like, the real thing. You have to indoctrinate people on some kind of like ideological level or academic level, because chemicals alone wouldn't do anything. You would have to have so much more than just a chemical. All a chemical could do would be to make people a bit, or something like that. That's all. If you were putting it in the water, if you were doing, none of that gives you the ability to just control people. That would be, a medicine without abandon. If you were to, say, hypnotize somebody somehow, but you gave them no suggestions or instructions, it would be pointless. So that's where chemtrails is at. Is if it was going to do something like that, it would have to allow people to be steered, right? Because that's the premise. Is it makes people docile, easy to control. But if that was what was really going on, why do you think suddenly knowing about it would make you able to combat that? Right? Like, that doesn't make sense. If you were doused with chemicals for that long and this thing was keeping you docile, how would just simply hearing about the conspiracy idea behind it allow you to suddenly no longer be affected by it and you're able to rise up against it? It just wouldn't. It would be the most expensive and elaborate conspiracy ever, to absolutely have no power over people just because they suddenly heard a conspiracy on the internet and they're like, yeah, okay. Oh, broke my chains. That was easy. Like, that would be the worst waste of money fucking ever. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Makes absolutely no sense at all. It's a complete lack of understanding of basic principles of science. And it's a complete lack of understanding of even the amount of stuff that would have to go into this conspiracy. Like, let alone the number of facilities you would have to have manufacturing that much chemical to constantly be pouring that out on the populace, all for them to see something on the internet and it just somehow suddenly just wasn't working anyway. Not for those people. Like it just doesn't add up and at all. Just a wild thing for me. Um, yeah, I mean, any conspiracy like that where people they don't really think about it. Like, there's definitely conspiracies out there that have merit, that have some kind of principle to them that makes sense, and you can kind of go, oh, okay, well, I get it, I get where you're going. MK Ultra. I mean, there's obviously conspiracies out there that people have talked about that have had some roots in fact. Uh, you know, there's always something that if we look into it enough, that we do find that there's seeds of truth to some of these things. Chemtrails is not one of them. There's no good way to execute a plan like that. Wind conditions can change so quickly. There's so much that can go wrong with it, and there would be so much that you would have to do before, during, and after to make it effective. And you would have so much risk during that time. Because if you're doing this and you're waiting, it's like somebody's waiting for the suggestions or instructions that would help indoctrinate their mind to one way or another. Every single thing along that way after they were initially doused could have the impacts that were completely the opposite of what you were going for. If you were going to spend trillions of dollars on something like chemtrails, would you really leave open that large of a window of error? Like, oh shit, we just sprayed these chemicals, but he was watching Matlock or something, and Matlock gave him instructions before we could. Unfortunately, he just got that influence, and it's just like it's so dumb. It makes zero sense that people believe that. So that's something to really think about with conspiracies. Anytime you encounter a conspiracy or something like that that sounds just crazy, break it down. Just have fun with analyzing how absolutely ludicrous the idea is. Like, what would have to happen to make that work? MK Ultra was one that was conceivable that it could work because of the fact that it required so little. It didn't have as much exposure to public things where people could see it going on or interfere with it. It could absolutely be done very easily in a very confined area with no oversight. And crazy, turned out that was true. Shit like that was happening. There's a movie called Manchurian Candidate. If you don't know what MK Ultra is, there's a movie called Manchurian Candidate, and it's got Denzel Washington into it. There's an older version of it as well, but I like the Denzel version. It's done very well. And it's not a true story as far as the way the movie goes. The movie's just a story based on the idea of it. But what MK Ultra is, it was a CIA, I believe, program to take people and using drugs like LSD and some other drugs, and a lot of conditioning exercises. You would be able to basically take somebody and condition them to have responses to programming. So once you let them go, they seem like and act like a normal person. They have no recollection of any of the programming until they receive a phone call, and it's got a specific set of keywords in a specific order or something of that nature, and that would activate them. And once they're activated, they carry out the instructions that you gave them during the conditioning, which may be to assassinate a local leader or something of that nature. Because the whole premise of a Manchurian Candidate is it's somebody who doesn't seem like they're out of place in whatever place they're going to be. So, like, if somebody was a Manchurian Candidate, it would have to be somebody who is going to be in the right place at the right time kind of already, or exist within the right organization already. You wouldn't have a Manchurian Candidate who's like Tom at Walmart, and he's going to be somebody you activate to try to kill the president. That wouldn't make any sense, because there's just no way to correlate those things. Like, he would never get anywhere near close enough to do it. So it didn't matter how well you trained and conditioned Tom. He just was never going to be the right person in the right place at the right time, or have the right accesses. So But yeah, the whole MK Ultra thing really did exist. There were individuals that were conditioned and they were able to elicit some success with that. Um, as far as we know, it's no longer continued. But as far as we know, if it's had any kind of success rate whatsoever, likely it was continued in some fashion, just not underneath the same department, same directive, same management, and probably went deeper. But that's conspiracy at that point, because once again, we only know that it did happen. We don't know that it's still happening. Uh, but it was a conspiracy that made more sense and turned out to be true, whereas this doesn't make any sense. And I mean, any conspiracy, just look at it that way. What would be the logistics? What would be the difficulty? Bird spy birds. Was it every bird is a fucking robot and is spying on you? Like there are no real birds. Obviously, there's fucking real birds. They're all real birds. Not that government hasn't tried to. The government has always tried to, like CIA, since they're mostly into the spying kind of tech. Not that the FBI or NSA doesn't have that kind of tech, but it's mostly CIA employed because of how they would normally spy on things. They've done a lot of different programs where they're trying to come up with ways to get cameras, microphones, any kind of sensors into sensitive conversations in sensitive areas so that they can get information that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get to. And to do that, normally you want something that looks innocuous, something that was very difficult to tell whether it's there. And the KGB does stuff like this. All the big agencies around the world that do a lot of spying. This is what they've all been trying to do. So you'll get things that look like birds. They try to do cats. They try to do other animals that would seem innocuous. If you were to look it up, you probably find all kinds of different ones: dragonflies, insects. Obviously, they've had more successful lately with newer tech because newer tech is so small, so lightweight, requires a lot less power than old tech does, and can store a lot more information than old tech could. So going in and recording a couple minutes of conversation doesn't require larger drives or sending a signal wirelessly to something. It can all be done locally on a very, very small scale. So I mean, obviously that tech is going to be there, but they're not using robot birds. If they were going to spy on you at this point in the game, I mean, between DARPA, CIA, you're talking about things that are probably more like the size of a housefly, if not smaller. It'd be so much easier. And they're not spying on the average American person. The average American person puts so much information out there for free that honestly needing to spy on anybody, like one of my favorite things is people who say that they don't want to have to get they don't want to have to register their gun yearly, because this is an option as far as gun control measures. Just making sure that if James buys this rifle today, every single year James is gonna re-up his registration on this rifle, make it like a $10 registration fee just for the cost of everybody having to do the paperwork and everything else that comes along with it, and having to pay for all the people who have to do all that shit. So bare minimal fee, whatever the case, whatever it's going to be. But you have to go and register your firearm or firearms, depending on the situation, every single year. And suddenly people are like, well, no, then they'll know exactly who's got what gun. Yeah, but when you buy the gun, you have to get a background check anyway. And then when you pay for the gun, if you're paying for it with a credit card or a bank card, debit card, or even a check, all of that's on your transaction anyway. So it's easy to follow your bank accounts and know who has what gun. That can all be logged by any kind of electronic system very, very quickly and effectively. So to think that the government would actually rather spy on you or needs things like a registration system to get a lot of that information is just out there, man. You have no idea how easy it is to get so much information off of people for free. And more than half the time, they don't even realize that they're giving out key details about things like that. That would make it really, really easy to isolate, potential threats or whatever the case may be. Um, like it, people want to make more things into conspiracy than really are conspiracy. Things are far more simple than that. Um, and I don't know, like, what's a good conspiracy? The that just a tough one, a tough one. I'm thinking like area it was the crash the UFO that crashed in Roswell. Let's say that's a tougher conspiracy. That one's harder to analyze because there's so many variables that are not common that would be relevant. It can be supported so well in either way. Like, was it an alien crash? Was there a crash at all? Was it a weather balloon? Blah blah blah. So many things that obviously, like the fact that they didn't say it was a weather balloon until like how much later, like a couple days later. Like if it was a weather balloon crash, would they have just been able to say it was a weather balloon crash? Also, if it was a weather balloon, why would they need that many people out there to do the search and recovery? Why would they block access to the scene if it was just a weather balloon? It doesn't matter if it's a government weather balloon. It would be something that even during that time would not be that considered that like classified, that other people couldn't have seen it or been around the crash site. Because there's nothing dangerous on those weather balloons that they would have had to been like, no, there's hazardous material or something of that nature. They would have had to say it was like some kind of new scientific weather balloon that was carrying something harmful. But at the same point, if they were doing that, then they would have to admit that there was something harmful on weather balloons that were flying over people's head. And obviously, the public wouldn't like that. But of course, they couldn't tell that story if that was the case, because that would make people also upset. Because that would mean that you got what kind of dangerous stuff is floating above our head. So there were so many things that just doesn't add up about any of their stories as far as it's obviously some sort of cover story. Do I know that it was an alien spacecraft? No. Do I think it could have been? I think it could have been something beyond from outside of our planet's atmosphere. I want to say. Doesn't mean that it had to be necessarily an alien spacecraft or something like that. Could have absolutely just been some kind of like asteroid or something like that. But there's so many questions left about it, and then the story that the government came up to cover it up could have been an experimental flight craft. Maybe it was just an experimental aircraft. From the United States government, and it would have been better for them to cover it up than to allow anybody to know what was going on, because they wanted to keep their secrets close. Absolutely could have been that. I know jet craft at that time were still fairly new, and we were working on newer and newer tech, stuff that was reaching supersonic speeds, and that would have been an area where there was a flight testing or aircraft testing base there, a classified aircraft testing facility around that area. So absolutely could have been something of that nature. That would have made sense. But the problem is, like, even all these years later, the government has never just said, no, it wasn't a fucking weather balloon. It was just it was one of our experimental aircraft. It crashed. Unfortunately, we lost the pilots. The suits that they wore may have looked like aliens because they were early kind of pressure suits to help them deal with the G-forces. So yeah, they would look fucking weird. But they weren't aliens. They were just dudes in flight suits. And, there was definitely, if you were going to create a cover story and recover from this, you that would be the way to have admitted it, that it was one of our own, like things and not a fucking weather balloon. But the fact that they reverted to weather balloon just made it so much harder to believe for anybody. So it's one of those conspiracies that, like, that would be a harder conspiracy. Something that, people can go either way with, and you can't prove one way or the other. There's not enough information to add up to one thing or another. Then really the majority of what you have to go off is the few people who are witnesses who just gave statements of their own. And then you've got other people who, of course, You've got the government's statements. I've encountered a few people who, um, in my life, who say that they were stationed there during that time on the airbase, and they would say, "Oh, I was stationed there, and it was nothing of the sort." Blah blah blah. I'm like, "Well, did you see the craft?" Well, no. Well, did you work on the recovery crews? Well, no. Did you have access to that hangar? No. Did you see the stuff come in the trucks? Yes. Did you see what it was inside the trucks? No. Okay, well, so you have no information whatsoever to really give to me. You can't tell me one thing or another for sure, but you're going to just give me the line that you must know just because you worked there. I worked on several military bases in my time. It wasn't not for very long. I was only in the Corps for a couple of years. Um, and I had access to a lot of classified information, but at the same time, I didn't have access, I didn't have access to all classified information. There was a shitload of stuff I never saw. Even if I had access to it, I didn't necessarily see it, everything that was going through. And that doesn't mean like I couldn't be like, well, there wasn't a second basement underneath that did something. I wouldn't even know if there was. There's so much potential for secrets within facilities that are you would think otherwise are wide open or you may work at, but you just don't have access to that stuff. So it's really weird for me when people say like they just know things despite so much information really saying that, hey, this was kept within a very, very specific group of people. Just because you were around that area doesn't mean you had information to that area. My father worked at Concord. He had some information about what was going on there. He didn't have all of the information about what was going on there. He did his job. He did his job well. But anytime you're dealing with classified stuff, you only get to know what you need to know to get your job done. They're not going to brief you on the whole fucking thing because you don't need to know the whole goddamn thing. You only need to know what you need to know for you to perform your task. Even people who would be dealing with some of these more detailed things, they still only get to know what they need to know to perform their task. It's called compartmentalization. The government does it very, very well. A lot of big businesses do that very, very well. So if you think things of that nature only happen in government, I would suggest to you to understand that it does not, and that a lot of very large, very profound businesses, very common businesses, also do things of that nature. I kind of want to put a border around my picture. So yeah, I mean the whole chemtrails thing is silly. The conspiracies are crazy, but I do enjoy conspiracies. I watch this. I don't know if you guys watch a lot of YouTube stuff. Since my kids got me into using the YouTube app on the TV, because I didn't really watch YouTube on my phone or anything. I would see the occasional video that somebody shared a link to, and I would just watch that if it was short. If it was long at all, I wouldn't watch it. But now that I have it on my TV, and there's so many different things on there that you can watch that are pretty entertaining. A lot of content creators do a pretty good job. I watched this fella named, oh gosh. Well, the show is the Y-Files. And the guy who hosts it, his name is AJ. And he talks about different things like cryptids, conspiracies, just fun stories and stuff. Government cover-ups, all that kind of stuff. And then what he does is he puts them, he lays it all out as if it's all true from the start. So like if he did one about the moon landing being faked, right? Probably one of my favorite ones. It's done really, really well. So he lays the whole thing out as if it was 100% that is the case. So the first majority of this whole thing is all about the moon landing and how it's fake, right? But then you get to the wrap up, and in the wrap up, he goes over each individual step and explains all of the flaws in it and how it's been debunked, and ends it with like, yeah, this is real. The moon landing did happen, and so I really enjoy it the way that he lays out the information and presents everything. It's entertaining, it's insightful, it's really thoughtful. I think it pays a lot of respect to the people who do believe some of those things. I think it pays a lot of respect to the scientific community and a lot of the facts out there when he does debunk it. And there's obviously things where, you can't necessarily debunk certain things because there just isn't information to debunk from. So there's a lot of that as well where, okay, but, this is all the information we have. So if that's the truth, if that's all that we can say as far as like trying to disprove it, then maybe there is a grain of truth through this. Does it mean that it is this or, something else? Who knows? And I really like the fact that, somebody out there is doing that work like that, presenting all of the information and then just being utterly fair across the board as to how it all works. And when, there was claims of somebody trying to debunk it, he even brings up the false debunking stuff. So I think it's really important to recognize all of that. So if you're ever really in the mood to try something, to look at something interesting, you can check out the Y-Files. I'm sure there's other ones on YouTube. If you know of a conspiracy channel on YouTube that really does stuff where they really analyze it, let me know. I'm always down to try to check out new channels and stuff. I've pretty much caught up on all of the Y-Files episodes since I've been sick because there's not much that I can do, and it gives me something to do. So I'm interested in watching more. If anybody wants to talk about like some conspiracies, I would be down with that. We can sit down, we can try to find whatever information we can find. Like I would love to do some research like live for people and show people a little bit of like how at least I go about some of the research that I do and how I try to validate and vet sources. So maybe they'll learn some tricks that will help them understand like, hey, this is good information or bad information or whatever the case may be. All right, so that's the chemtrails. That's the beginning of talking about conspiracies. I will do more videos on more conspiracies as we go. I want to talk about all sorts of different things, but I want to have like real conversations. I want to have like real discussions. I want to do real talks. I will talk about faith, not just my faith, but I will talk about in the broad sense of faith in general. I'm a Christian, but I think that's doing injustice to how I practice. There's a bit of Gnosticism to my faith, a bit of mysticism to it. I don't go to church much anymore. Felt like a lot of churches just didn't treat myself or other people correctly. I still love being in churches. I still feel a beautiful connection when I'm there with God. I just don't feel like I need somebody to be my leader or my guiding hand. Too often when I have somebody doing that, I feel as if I'm being kind of steered away from that. Like I'm losing the connection when other people are there. And some people, I get it. Some people definitely do need somebody to guide them or to offer them guidance. And it's important for those individuals, I think, to have that. I do think that those people should exercise caution in who they allow to guide them. If you're looking for somebody to guide you spiritually, and somebody else jumps out of like the fucking woodwork and says, "Hey, I can do that," all you have to do is always be leery of somebody like that. God may have sent them to you, but he's not the only person at work out there. A lot of people have their own intents, and they're not agents of God. They're just humans. They're just doing their own thing. And unfortunately, a lot of people, they want to take advantage of that. So be cautious when you're looking for somebody to give you guidance on a spiritual level, who you allow to do that. I have studied so many different faiths to a greater or lesser degree. Um, and I think faith is it's such a really interesting topic. Um, when I first started learning, I actually started learning about Babylonian culture from the Necronomicon, the book. I got that when I was like 14 or 15, I think. And it really opened up my eyes to um, like the whole mystic culture of like the whole Babylonian Sumerian cultures way back in the day. The Egyptian culture, because even the Egyptians had the Book of the Dead, and they had a lot of sorcery within that, um, magics and whatnot. But they still had the mythos, they still had the pantheons, they still had their gods. And of course, you've got the Greeks, the Romans, the Norse, who all have their own versions of the pantheons and which gods do what. Um, it's just really like the whole thing of faith and mysticism and everything get really intertwined, and I find it fascinating. I love to talk about it with people. I like hearing other people talk about it and really just having discussions about faith and their philosophies. Uh, so anytime anybody wants to talk about that, like I'm going to be getting more into that. The kiddos is home. So, yeah, there's. And that's my mother-in-law. Hey, Ma. I'm streaming online. So yeah, we'll talk about all sorts of different things in the future. Want to get into a whole. I don't want everything to be political. I don't want everything to be anything. I want to just have discussions and just get people to talk about more things. And
Getting enough pills?
No.
What's them for?
That one is my
CARVIDOPDPA.
Oh, it's the Parkinson's medication.
Is it helping?
More than I can ever really illustrate. So we'll get into a lot of stuff as we go on. I'll talk about health related things. We can talk about all sorts of things, but I want to talk about legitimately everything. As sick as I am, honestly, I don't know how how much how well my mind's going to be going on into the next couple of years. One of the points I made the other day was when I game. I play like League of Legends or Call of Duty. I've been doing a lot of Black Ops 6. Like I'll be playing and I'll constantly kind of forget where I'm at. And it's important to me. Like I'll have to it's not important. I'll forget where I'm at, and then I have to like look down at like my items list or look around the map or whatever to figure out where I'm at, what I'm doing, what the plan is, what the situation is. Like I get lost frequently. That's the brain fog and the confusion, and it's that I do, but I like them. Have a good night at work, kiddos.
Okay.
I must have got a car fixed, but yeah, I mean, like I get lost constantly right now, so I don't know how much time I'm going to have left. Talking about things gives me a bit more of a linear mentality, a linear existence, so I can kind of stick on stuff, especially like if I'm reading materials. It gives me a really easy path to follow. So it's not so hard that way. But when I'm doing things not where I'm not watching something or reading something, if I'm just playing a game or something like that, it's really easy for me to get lost. And I'm not. Don't feel fucking bad for me. There's a lot of people who got a lot worse than I do. So I mean, I'm just gonna I'll figure out my way through it. I always do. I'm a resourceful guy. Right now, all I really want to do is try to talk with people and try to find the commonalities, try to find the things that bring us together. and try to bond people a little bit better. Try to fix communities and relationships between, everybody within society insofar as I can. And I think we can. I think we're going to do it. I think we can do well. Not from me specifically. I mean, like, I hope that I play a role in that, but I think people just in general are going to heal past this division and this craziness that's going on right now. So I believe that with all my heart. I really do. I just think it's important that we, that people are out there just like me doing the work. Um, I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube where, like, you got the Midas Touch Network, and you got all these guys on the the liberal side of news media. And as much as I appreciate what they do for a lot of things, I also get frustrated with what they do because it's so divisive a lot of the times. And I'm not saying that there aren't conservative people out there or conservative networks out there who are just doing fucking ridiculous things that just drive me nuts and piss me off. There absolutely is. Just like I know that there's news media out there who's pissing off conservatives because of the shit that they say that's divisive. But it's not terrible to have people point out of things that are objectively, awful. But that also can't be the only message we put out there. If you're a liberal or if you're a conservative, I don't really care. The news media has to not just spend all of its time just bashing people. I don't even care if what they're saying is true. For those of you who haven't met my orange cat, that's Barney. He's an awesome guy. He has been my cuddle buddy through all of this. But yeah, I mean, the news media just needs to get off its constant absolute trashing of everybody, and only reporting negative things constantly, and in bad faith, honestly, a lot of the times. If you can't build a following on hope, a lot of people will build one on anger. But my ask is not to do that. I would ask anybody, I would challenge all of these people to build a platform based on hope, on facts and good messaging. Because honestly, if people don't like somebody, like conservatives didn't like Biden, they inherently somehow didn't like Kamala because they didn't really know much about her, but somehow she was going to be the start of World War III. I'm giving you guys shit because that's a wild one for me. Like, she obviously was not going to be the start of World War III. Really don't see where that one came through. But, regardless, my wife corrects me all the time when I see irregardless. Regardless, that's just not the case. And I don't want to hear negative crap about Donald Trump all the friggin' time. Unfortunately, right now with his cabinet picks and everything else, that's going to be a lot in the news. That should be, I do think the conservative voters should be a little bit more aware of who these people are and what their merits truly are. Be making more intelligent decisions and having discussions about some of the stuff. God, I'm trying to remember that farmer's fucking name, who they just added to. I want to say it was underneath the Board of Health or something like that. Joe, I can't remember his name offhand. Some farmer dude who's talking about like how you can make his big sales point is how you can make a fortune just with your own farm. They forget to mention that the guy inherited his land, that he has a bunch of interns basically work for free with absolutely horrible conditions to do this. And his thing is like, well, I'm teaching them. Much like I would compare it to kind of like a Trump University sort of thing, where they say, but I'm teaching you, or God, there's a lot of companies that do this too, where it's like an unpaid internship. They absolutely squeeze every last bit of juice out of these interns, fully expecting that these people will leave and not do something. Or pyramid scheme businesses where they're like, we'll teach you how to flip houses, or sell makeup or something. But the person at the top is the one who's always making all this money on it. and the people at the bottom are never making shit because the person at the top is always doing it through exploit. He's always exploiting people. They're always exploiting people to get to where they're at. People at the bottom just don't have the ability to exploit. One of the reasons is you're not rich enough to get people to buy into your bullshit to exploit them. You have to attain a certain level of wealth before people will just be like, well, shit, guy's got so much money, you should just go into it. So yeah, it doesn't work when you're on the lower stepping pole. But this farmer guy, that's how he has made his business. A lot of the stuff that he talks about is just patently untrue. It leaves out so much information, and it's been pointed out by farmers and real farmers have constantly come out against this guy and said, no, this guy's full of shit. A lot of the stuff he's talking about is just not true whatsoever. These are farmers who their entire, their families have been farming for generations, and very successful. A lot of these farmers, so they don't have a platform because a lot of farmers, they're not looking for a platform. They're not trying to go sell a product other than their corn or their cow or whatever the case may be. So the product that most farmers are selling is what they're doing on the farm itself. That's their product. It's their wheat, their corn, their oats, their animals, their livestock. They're not trying to get political positions or follows on the internet. That's not what they're selling. They're not selling a brand. They're selling a product. So anytime you see like a farmer or something out there trying to sell a brand, doing the same thing that thousands or hundreds of thousands of other farmers are doing across America, many very successfully, much more successfully than this guy, matter of fact. But they're not looking to do the brand. If you see somebody who's looking to sell a brand on any subject matter like that, you should always look into it. That's why, when I first heard the guy, I was like, well, who's this cat? And I saw a bunch of good things about him. I said, okay, so I see where people are writing good things about him. Now I need to find what are the negatives. So I had to do some deep diving and find out all the negative things about him. The controversies, things where he's been in debates, things where, things he said were debunked. And that takes more research because you have to put in the correct wording to find those articles. Most articles are going to be positive. You're going to have less negative articles. So you have to be willing to look at what the claims are and look up anything that might be contentious to that. Find those key phrases, find those things, and type those in and find those articles that are going to, and then of course you do want ones that are accredited. So, that's the kind of stuff that I want to get into. All right. Well, I'm going to go play some video games. I hope you guys enjoyed the Contrails and conspiracy talk and whatever else was all in there. I will check you guys another time.